Well, hello, that's me again. Today is January 21st. It's Saturday, so there's something for the weekend. And some people told me already in England and the United Kingdom it means something else altogether. But here it is. And this is basically a response to the requests of people say, please comment on this, on that. So people ask me, please comment on the situation in the Russian Navy, which actually is involved actively in support of special military operations. So here I am. But before I go, I want to make sure that we are on the same wavelengths, if you wish. And let's start with this. It seems like, why does he even bring it into this discussion? But let me put it this way. Here is the Field Manual 101-5, which is the staff organization and operations. It's unclassified, it's available for public release, so, and I would never do such a stupid thing than, getting into some kind of classified issues. So anyhow, this is a general organization of the staffs of all kinds of level, including the level of the divisions and corps, and down to battalion. So, and it's an important thing. It's obviously very boring document for non-professionals. For professionals, it pretty much makes sense, and let me put it this way. Generally speaking, what American Field Manual and U.S. Army Field Manual about the staff writes is very common too, and very kind of, alongside, for example, how Russians write their staff manuals. Some of those staff manuals, of course, are top secret, but we're not going there. We're going there in the general organization and operations, and here it is. Look what the words which you will see very many times throughout all those type of manuals, and here it is. Staff responsibilities and duties. Look what they write about. And again, you have to understand, it goes as high as the basically army level. So, commanders can minimize risk by increasing certainty. Certainty. Yes, remember, if you go to the first of my videos, I'm talking about the main thing about warfare is resolution of the uncertainties, be that technological way or just plain simple by the intuition and high level of professional preparation of the officers. So we continue. The staff supports the commander by providing better, more relevant, timely, and accurate information, making estimates and recommendations, preparing plans and orders, and monitoring executions. Well, let me put it this way. Estimates and assessments are the words which you will meet on virtually every page of this manual, because these are what staffs do. They assess and they estimate. And guess what? They do estimates. Evidently, there is a problem with this in the United States nowadays. And if you want to understand why this problem is, go to Andrei Raevsky, the Saker site, the Vineyard of the Saker. He wrote an excellent, basically, piece about speaking about my constant point that the American modern elites are totally incompetent, and I'm talking about across the board. Military, political, scientific, what have you. And actually read it, because it's a wonderful piece, and it explains what happens, and especially since Andrei himself, he has 2 degrees from American top-notch strategic studies programs and things of this nature, so he's an insider, and he confirms basically what I was writing about, that today we are looking into the abyss of the utter incompetence on all levels. Well, except for maybe some middle level in Pentagon. But it is all relevant to those estimates and calculations, because evidently people who make plans in Pentagon, and let alone London, I'm not even taking London seriously, I'm not taking whatever they do militarily seriously. They are pipsqueak militarily, but hey, if they still think that they're so great, let them. But the point is, Washington in general failed the main fundamental thing, including Pentagon, on which is prescribed in the field manual. It's, of course, the fact that you need to make a proper estimates and you need to make a proper assessments. But I am writing for years now, many years, how they miscalculate non-stop and practically everything. And so now they miscalculated in Russia and Ukraine, and they have to live with those consequences, basically. And they cannot live with them because they, you know what, they miscalculated. And it's very difficult to admit mistake for normal administration and normal political elites. For modern political elites in the United States, it's impossible because they are basically nothing but ambition, period. There's no intellect, there is no any real serious skills, especially on the political side of the issue. And that's why I told you to read Andrei's article, which is excellent. But we need to go even further and to basically explain why they are really not that good at anything. Here it is. This is that situation which now they are asking Ukraine to withdraw from Bakhmut, Artyomovsk, which will fall, again, as I said, it doesn't matter. In a week or in 5 days, who cares? You know, we know that there are 25 brigades there of armed forces of Ukraine, and practically they are being thrown into meat grinder, and losses are catastrophic. I mean, something we haven't seen since the World War II. But look at this. This is the plan which Pentagon developed. No, I'm not kidding you. This is the plan which Pentagon developed, and you look up the news, they say you need to withdraw to Bakhmut to get ready for the spring offensive. The reason I do it on this map, which is RIA Novosti, you know, it's a very credible source, and unlike all those Telegram channels and all those bloggers and military analysts, they basically base it on the data of the Russian Defense Ministry. And here is the strategic plan. This is what they learned wrongly, by the way, from, for example, when Russians left Kupiansk and Red Liman, because Pentagon decided that, oh yeah, you can throw again the bunch of the separate smaller groups, you know, across the terrain. I'm not showing here terrain, which is in the pink. It's all flat. It's all basically fields. And then you can kind of repeat this Red Liman type thing, which of course you cannot, because obviously Russia has a completely different approach to the defense. But that's the plan, to throw some groups, whatever will be left at that time, and of course they basically expect to give them something like 100 Bradleys and some strikers, the whole 14 tanks, and throw them into those fields and try to kind of, you know, disperse them and then collect them around Melitopol, and then that's the way they want to cut Russian grouping in two. I mean, this is amateurs, obviously, who do that, so, but you know what can I say? I just explained to you by the fact that they miscalculated grossly, practically across the board on everything they ever basically calculated about Russia and Soviet Union, by the way. And here's the plan. That's the plan. That's the red arrow. That's the only thing they can come up with. And it doesn't matter how many tanks they will put there or whatever. It just, obviously, they need to do something and be seen as doing something, because obviously the Bakhmut, the fall of Bakhmut, well, it's not even the fact that it's geographic. It's the fact that we're talking about tens of thousands, and we are looking at high tens of thousands killed, let alone the losses which they lose. Again, they lose killed a battalion a day there right now. So, but hey, what do I know? Because obviously they know better than me, but who am I to really judge it? But that's what it is. And this is beyond the level of amateurity. It's ridiculous to the point of, don't they think that Moscow knows what is going on? But who knows? You know, they obviously didn't read even their very own field manual on the organization of staffs, because there is a whole chapter there on the quality of the personnel, staff officers, who they are supposed to be, with their initiative, competence is all over, and their ability to provide those very assessments and estimates which will guide and drive the commander's decision. But again, it's a boring document. So, but people, let's go back to something which people ask me constantly to comment, and I commented on this before. I commented about Russian and Soviet navies before, but now people ask me, can you basically do a little bit more expansive, so to speak, comment on this, and especially in the view of the upcoming release, so to speak, floating out of the deeply modernized, I mean, absolutely deeply modernized Admiral Nakhimov nuclear cruiser. And you can see here, this is the Peter the Great. It's the same sister ship. And here, let me show you something. And this is, you will not be able to buy it in Russia in the store. As you can see yourself, you see this thing? This is the mug which was given to the officers of the cruiser Peter the Great during the 20th anniversary celebration. At that time, the classmate, my friend, who is friend of, you know, just basically since the childhood, he graduated in 83, I graduated in 85. And there were a bunch of our graduates from 85, 84, and 83 serving, including the, at that time, executive officer of the Peter the Great, later Rear Admiral Alexander Turilin, who became actually the commanding officer of the Admiral Nakhimov. He commanded Admiral Nakhimov, then went to command, obviously, Admiral Kuznetsov and the whole division, which was involved, the division of the missile ships of the Northern Fleet. So these were my classmates and friends. So, and last time I was in Russia, I was given, you know, say, hey, this is the, you know, the gift, and that's what we had, obviously. How do you celebrate the, you know, the 20th of the nuclear missile cruiser? You just create mugs, you know, with those things. You can create all kinds of mugs, but these mugs are separate. They have been made specifically for this anniversary. Anyhow, so, but the point is, a number of my classmates actually commanded those ships, and when people say, what's going on with this whole situation with the nuclear missile cruiser and why Russian Navy looks like it looks today, let me explain a little bit more about this. And this, bear with me. Here is the issue which and this is one of my favorite pieces of basically naval and military thought by men who, again, this is 1976. United States Armed Forces Navy were you know, there were many competent and many thinking people, including Mr. Admiral Stansfield Turner, later the chief director of the CIA. And he is explaining that this strategy and the thing which remains, you know, unshaken, unchanged since today. And he's talking when speaking to Joseph Harsh on the of Christian Science Monitor on the question who has the best navy. He explains in terms of sea control. Third comes sea control, and here's where recent Soviet shipbuilding activities has altered the situation. Through the Korean War and almost to the end of the Vietnam War, the United States has had undisputed and exclusive control of the major sea lanes of the world. The Soviets did not possess ships capable of cruising at long distances from home port. They did not have the means to interfere with American control of the sea lanes. Now they do have some and growing ability to attempt to deny American control. And then he explains. The big carrier is vulnerable to long-range missiles. No carrier could survive a nuclear missile blow, so the great American superiority in projection of power ashore counts heavily in situations short of a Soviet-American war, but counts for almost nothing in such a war. This was, guys, remember, 1976. Beautiful, precise definition by the absolutely very smart man, I mean, Stansfield Turner, who was the part of the Project 60, headed by that time Admiral Elmo Zumwalt, which was into reassessing the whole situation with the American fleet. And so what does it all mean? When you look into the history of the Soviet Navy, primarily. We can talk about here all we want about all those ships and all those missile ships and development of those sea-launched, underwater and surface launch cruise missiles, which Russians developed already by 50s. By 60s, Russians developed the first ever submarine launch of the cruise missiles. And so you look at this, by 1970, already Soviet Navy have been basically presenting an astounding, variety of their anti-ship missiles, most of them heavy class, capable to sink immediately a cruiser, or let alone when the salvo was successful, they could sink basically the aircraft carrier. And of course we know this part, but let me show you something which was actually very critical in all those this situation. Obviously we can take a look. For example, even today it's P700 Granite shipwreck, which is the absolutely state-of-the-art missile, although it's becoming obsolete, but still they are going through some upgrades, and this is a shoot and forget thing. It flies at 550 kilometers range. It can fly in salvo, and each missile in salvo can control other missiles in salvo. If you shoot 8 missiles, each of the 8 missiles are fully integrated and fully networked with other missiles. They exchange information, they make their decisions on the correct choice of targets, and this thing is still today on their deployed on the first line submarines. But we need to take a look at something which many people do not want to recognize, that Russians were not building just those long-range missiles on the surface fleet. Here it is. If you look attentively at that thing, it's of course 222K. And as you can see yourself, under the belly of this very old bomber, long-range bomber, 22K, you can see yourself the missile stacked underneath it, and this missile was called X-22. Today, those X-22 with highly modernized warheads and basically electronics, they fly in Ukraine and they still cannot shoot them down. These were almost Mach 4.8. Very high speed missiles with the range of around 600 kilometers, whose task was to lift a bunch of those bombers, for example, or even this type of bombers, of course, Tu-95, who carried this Tu-22 of that modification. They carried 3 of those missiles. Tu-95 also carried something like 2 or 3 of them. You can look it up. I don't remember from the top of my head. And when you're at this stage, you could basically throw basically a regiment of about basically 20 to 15 of those bombers, and you would have basically a very solid salvo, even considering the fact that American carrier battle group was defended very well by, obviously at that time, deck aviation of such nature as obviously F-14 Tomcats, and they allegedly carried the missiles which could, which is AIM-54 Phoenix, but which could allegedly shoot down those missiles. It could not, but it doesn't matter, because something had to be done to address this problem for the US Navy, and believe me, many people were afraid of this. Then, of course, later came those wonderful, much more upgraded Tu-22M3, and as you can see yourself here, this Tu-M23 carries already other iteration of the X-22 missiles. And again, at that time, the range was about 600 kilometers. And of course, Russians and Soviets were creating all kinds of all those missiles. There were missiles which were air ballistic and reached almost Mach 5 already in 70s. But you had to do it in a very close range from carrier battle group. And in this case, even those high-speed missiles were not good enough, because their carriers will be shot down, those Tu-22s, all their iterations. But just to demonstrate to you what we had in 1991, by the time the Soviet Union collapsed and obviously Soviet armed forces basically disintegrated, what by the end of 1991, the force, which was called the Naval missile carrying aviation, had about 260 carriers, which could in the first launch deliver 780 heavy anti-shipping missile of the long range, which would mean 32 average missiles per one carrier battle group. No matter how good you had it in terms of the basically air defense, and that's why Aegis and SM-6 and SM-3 missiles came about. There was no way you could avoid this launch. You could basically shoot down anything, and basically by the time those 32 would be launched, some of them, or maybe a few of them, will create what is called a leaker, which is of course the missile which goes through the air defense and hits the target. Well, if this wasn't bad enough, after the Soviet Union collapsed and everybody, and American admirals didn't like this naval missile-carrying aviation, obviously Russians came up with this thing. And that one have been already a revolution in many respects. It is KH or X-32. It is a very deep modernization of the X-22. And it is a completely new baby because the missile range was increased dramatically to 1,000 kilometers plus. We don't know the actual range. It could be very even longer. And as you can see yourself, it also flies Mach 4.8. It has inertial and terminal, which is GLONASS. It could use actually no less than GPS, if you will, but it's a very heavy missile. Here we, for some reason, they gave, but it's an old information. They gave the production run of 32, but I think so Russia already has hundreds of those. So, and it's entered service in 2016, and that is horrifying missile. It has the active and very stable, very resistant to electronic warfare, active radar warhead, and also I believe it has the optical channel. So basically, it's difficult to basically shoot down the launch of those missiles. So when you look at this and you consider the fact that at this stage Russia has 50 fully operational Tu-22 M3s, and she is now continuing with the M3M variations, and you have the fairly large number, I don't remember, you can look it up, so don't quote me on that, something like 20 or 30 Tu-95s which are capable of carrying this. So you look at something which is still huge number of the anti-shipping missiles which can wreak havoc on any kind of the carrier battle group or any kind of the surface fleet which obviously United States Navy wants to deploy in basically dealing with what it is considers its main task, force projection. And obviously Russian Navy doesn't have this task. It's not its main task. It's a classic sea-denial role. And sea-denial role is to sink anybody who wants to attack Russia. And in this respect, Russian Navy today has enough air assets. And now we obviously have this new class of submarines, frigates. And we're going back to obviously our Admiral Nakhimov, which is being modernized and to be supposed to be afloat very soon. What's so special about it? It's a completely new ship, basically, and it's a ship which carries navalized version of S-400. Some people say it will carry the also polymentary dude system, which is the four-phased arrays, and which is basic. It is a land variant of the S-350 Vitis, and this is an extremely advanced air defense system. But most importantly, the whole thing will carry about, I believe, 240 missiles of all types, and most of them will be Zircons, 3M22 Zircons. And let me show you what it means when even the, for example, group of the new Admiral Nakhimov, some people say that it will be obviously part of the Admiral remodeled and completely upgraded Admiral Kuznetsov carrier battle group, possible. But when you have this type of the ship with the immense striking power, and you have obviously all kinds of frigates, and you have the obviously submarines, something like Yasin class, which is Granate class, Project 885 submarines underneath there. So you have very damn impressive firepower. And let me show you something. As we already know, Zircon was officially confirmed in its range of the 1500 kilometers. And let me show you what, and you've seen it before. This is how American carrier battle group looks in terms of the actual scale to the range of 800 kilometers is of the Onyx missile. The area will be, basically, which they will need to search will be about 2 million square kilometers. Now, increase this range roughly twice. Well, let's say even 1500 kilometers. As you know, the area of the circle is pi r squared. So in this case, the area changes as the square of the radius, right? So if your radius is almost twice larger than this radius, and we're talking about zircon radius, that we mean what? The area which a carrier battle group will have to observe and search grows almost 4 times. So we're looking at around, well, 1500 kilometers gives you something like 7 something million square kilometers. So good luck searching that area. And that's what you have to understand. And I showed you this piece before. Here's how there are 800 kilometer circles of the submarines and surface ships with zircon look if we look at the 800 kilometers range. If you look at 1500 kilometers range, then we can see you can see yourself that, for example, modernized Admiral Nakhimov, which will be hanging out at the Giuk Gap, which is Greenland, Iceland, United Kingdom Gap, with its basically battle group, it will completely stop any kind of the provision of any kind of the supplies to Europe by the US Navy and the strategic lift forces. They will not be able to get there because they will be sunk. And considering the air defense of those assets, Russian assets, and what we see in terms of the development of the submarine force, you begin to understand that those ships, apart from having well, they are beautiful ships, let's be honest, very beautiful ships, apart from having very impressive visuals, but when you carry, let's say, 40 or 45 zircons, apart from other missiles, I'm talking about strike missiles. I'm not talking air defense missiles. That's the whole other story. We're looking at hundreds of them. For example, just to give you, again, example, the Admiral Nakhimov will carry 6 sets of the navalized Panzer S-1. This is, my gosh, it's pretty impressive, okay? And this is just for the point the defense, the short-range defense. Air defense. So when you look at this salvo, you basically can sink in single salvo the whole fleet, basically, and that's what people have to understand. So pardon me for using the word basically, but in this particular case, the word basically, the term basically is completely justified, because this is what basically it is. This is the basic scenario, and this is evidently the thing which when Admiral Stansfield Turner was warning about, they miscalculated. They basically, rejected it. They say, nah, it doesn't matter. We're good. Look at how cool we look like. And now what you have, United States completely lost arms race in the missiles and the high precision weapons which fly on the incredible distances, and they are hypersonic. You cannot catch them, you cannot intercept them. You cannot also basically repel the something like 15 or 16 missiles salvo of P-800 Onyx. What kind of the assets you will need. You can easily calculate it. We can calculate it if it comes down to it. And so when you look at this and you look at how Admiral Nakhimov is being put into the basically remodeling, upgrade, look at what, for example, the January 23, people still continue to exercise this illusion, even in the U.S. Navy. This is the Captain Sam Tangredi of the U.S. Navy, who writes about that, bigger fleets wins. Well, yeah, correct. But remember Svechin, Alexander Svechin, that each war has its own character, its own logic. You cannot directly apply those historical records as lessons to modern situation. Look what Captain Tangredi writes. Using technological advantage as an indicator of quality, historical research on 28 naval wars or wars with significant and protracted naval combat indicates that 25 were won won by the side with larger fleet. When fleet size was roughly equal, superior strategy and substantially better trained and motivated crews carried the day. Only 3 could be said to have been won by a smaller fleet with superior technology. Well, this type of the thinking is, look at this, what he's talking about. For the past 3 decades, the mantra "numbers don't matter" has been repeated by defense decision makers and sometimes senior Navy leaders. The perspective is that a smaller fleet of ships of greater individual quality, such as superior weapons technology or platform design, can defeat a larger but less technologically advanced fleet. Actually, it's true. It is true, and it is true across even the modern, if you wish, let's say, modern age, Vietnam War, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Yeah, those wars, obviously not all of them are naval wars, but they didn't teach us that much. And he's talking about, after all, the US Navy has experienced a revolution in warfare created by the synergistic effect of increased weapons accuracy, improved intelligence, and widespread communications. This is where he is mistaken. You cannot get into the Peloponnese Wars or the war or Battle of Lepanto. You cannot even go to the Falkland War and start basically protracting or trying to project it on the modern experiences. They are different. They are indeed different. And one of the famous and most favorite piece of junk which have been floated around about Russian missile development, which for now is so advanced, the United States is not going to catch up. I mean, it's the axiom right now, is this. 2 years ago, one of those guys who are the specialists suddenly said, "Oh my God, intelligence SEC hypersonic defense conference #2. You see, NATO are interested in hypersonic now. Expert Dennis van der Sable was basically stunned. Without disclosing classified info, apparently Russia demonstrated some very good targeting capability at a range of 500 kilometers, which was a bit of a surprise for the intel community." Well, guys, let me tell you, read the freaking field manual about the staff work, because Russians can actually provide reliable targeting already using Liana pretty much anywhere in the northern hemisphere. And those satellites, they fly on the height of about 600 kilometers, which is unachievable. The anti-satellite weapons, which have been presented with such a pump, they just do not reach there. I'm talking about Western anti-satellite weapons. Russian anti-satellite weapons, oh my gosh. Look up 8235 and what it shoots down and on what orbit. 600 kilometers. So, this is what I wanted to tell you. This is what I wanted to comment about today for your weekend about, well, if you wish, what's coming with Admiral Nakhimov being floating out and Peter the Great going instead of it for the same type of modernization. Maybe it will carry already S-500, I don't know. We'll see. And when Admiral Nakhimov will be pulled out of the dock and will be afloat as the basically completed ship, we'll talk about this in addition, because it will become the most powerful ship ever created. So this is what I wanted to tell you today. And as always, those who can afford, please support me on Patreon and buy me coffee, Jack Daniels, what have you, and obviously subscribe to my channel. And you know what, guys, have a nice weekend. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.